Okay. Hello again. This is in my way. Okay. You can still see me over the laptop. Excellent. I'm not that tall. Well, anyways. Just a reminder, friends, my name is Reverend Tori Mullin, and I am the growth animator for Eastern Ontario and Quebec. And I'm delighted to be sharing a little bit with you this afternoon about evangelism. So Shanna is actually going to go around and hand out a handout that you can take home with you. We have French and English. Choose whichever one would suit you best. But my hope is you might find today a tool that might be helpful for you in your personal life or perhaps in your community of faith. Because we've heard about the importance of sharing the good news of others. How after experiencing personal transformation through the Jesus story, through the liberation that God offers, God's world, how we cannot help but want to share our hope with others. But we also have to ask that question, how do we do this? Next slide, please. Dans la première lettre de Pierre, le pasteur nous adresse cette recommandation. Soyez toujours prêts à vous défendre face à ceux qui vous demandent de justifier l'espérance qui est en vous. Nous sommes tous dotés de talents différents et certaines personnes sont habiles avec les mots, disons en l'esprit vif. Par contre, il y en a autres parmi nous qui doivent s'entraîner un petit peu. Toutefois, le temps que nous consacrons à être prêts à justifier l'espérance que nous avons ne se limite pas à vouloir avoir les mots pour le dire. Il s'agit là également d'une pratique de gratitude, de réflexion sur notre cheminement dans la foi et sur les progrès que nous avons réalisés. Apprendre les mots de notre propre bonne nouvelle est un exercice spirituel qui nous rapproche de Dieu. En pensant à l'évangélisation, à la diffusion de la bonne nouvelle en tant que pratique spirituelle, j'ai voulu présenter un outil pour nous aider à approfondir nos relations avec Dieu à partir des assises de l'Église unie. Aujourd'hui, je vous fais connaître 4 postures intérieures ou attitudes que nous pouvons cultiver alors que nous souhaitons faire part de la bonne nouvelle qui nous a été transmise, un mélange de spiritualité profonde et de vie de disciples dynamiques. Next slide. But first, let's talk about what we're worried about. When we hear people talk about evangelism or testimony or witness, we tend to picture something like, I think we went one ahead too fast. We should have a picture of there we go. Perhaps you think of the street preacher loudly proclaiming the end times, or that dreaded knock on the door. That knock that makes you pretend that no one is home, or perhaps a friend who keeps awkwardly steering the conversation to that question of whether you have been saved. We can come up with any number of scenarios that make us feel uncomfortable. And that's not what I'm suggesting today. We want to think about an evangelism that's not obnoxious, insensitive, or predatory. Next slide. Instead, we want to cultivate an attitude that keeps these things in mind. Evangelism requires consent. Consent is when someone gives you permission to enter their bubble, and that can be a physical bubble, like with a hug, or an emotional bubble, like having a vulnerable conversation. We always wait for that curious question to come to us. We wait for consent. We wait for an invitation to share, and then we respond to what we're being asked. In other words, we let the gospel do its own self-promotion, and we don't force Jesus on anyone. And friends, we earn the right to share with others by being non-judgmental and compassionate. We demonstrate our transformation through how we live, by the way that we love others and seek justice. It is through living out our confession of faith that we earn the trust to share with our words. And our third consideration, evangelism does, in fact, require words. But they need to be your own words. You need to find your good news to share. Remember, it's not an argument. We're not trying to convince anyone of anything. We are merely witnessing to our transformation. We believe that when folks come and see that God is at work, that something wonderful happens. Now, what I'm going to present to you today is not meant to be the be-all and end-all of how to do evangelization. It comes from my experience and my study, but I hope that it can be a jumping off point for you to discover your own attitudes and your own postures, and that this can be a conversation starter within your communities of faith to think a little bit more about how you tell your stories and what transformation you have experienced. So without further ado, la première attitude. La première posture intérieure que nous voulons cultiver est l'ouverture. Mon corps est ouvert à rencontrer le Christ dans les personnes familières et inconnues. Inspiré de l'enseignement de Christ qui apparaît comme un étranger dans l'Évangile, à savoir l'accueil des personnes étrangères et l'identification avec celles-ci. Cette première attitude jette les bases non seulement pour l'évangélisation, mais pour les relations avec les autres. Car pour la plupart d'entre nous, il n'y a pas de diffusion de la bonne nouvelle qui sont efficaces à l'extérieur des relations. Certains et certaines parmi nous seront appelés à prendre la parole comme prédicatrices et prédicateurs, prophètes, militants et militants, leaders ou enseignantes ou enseignants. Mais la plupart du temps, nous transmettons nos foi aux personnes qui nous sont entourées par le biais d'une relation d'amour. Ce qui m'amène à vous parler de la deuxième attitude. Drum roll, please. Lorsque nous sommes ouverts, nous pouvons ainsi cultiver la curiosité. I can tell you're a curious bunch. Être curieux signifie qu'il n'y a pas de place pour le jugement. La curiosité que nous manifestons envers les autres nous invite à écouter leur histoire, à leur poser des questions, à commencer à nous intéresser beaucoup à leur vie et à leur cheminement dans la foi. Je m'intéresse aux personnes qui m'entourent et je les écoute attentivement. Our third attitude. Yes, drum roll every time. Now our third attitude, next slide please, is a response to our first two. We are open to God's Spirit around us. We are curious about those we encounter, and so we are moved to pray. A prayerful attitude is not an attitude of ego. of wanting to say the right thing or come across in the right light. A prayerful attitude centers the other person and desires good things for them. I invite God to lead my thoughts and actions so that I may love others well. And it can be the simplest prayer. God, how can I love this person best? It can be a heartfelt prayer that acknowledges that we have so little power in this world. God, this person has shared such a painful story with me. Please be with them and help them know they are loved. And sometimes, friends, this is where we stay. Sometimes this is where our evangelism journey with someone ends. We are open to them, we love them deeply, and we ask God to be present in their lives, and that's it. Sometimes that is the faithful response. Next slide, please. And other times, we are given a gift. Other times, we have earned someone's trust and respect, and they make the vulnerable choice to ask us to share our stories, which in turn is also a vulnerable act. And so my prayer is that you will be bold, that when invited, you will find your words to share a small part of your own faith journey with others, to proclaim God's liberating message through your one human experience. When invited, I risk sharing my story of transformation with others. And friends, it honestly helps to practice the act of gratitude, the act of naming God at work in our lives, so that when the call to boldness comes, we are ready. Last slide, please. So I'm going to share a very short story with you about what this can look like in your daily life. I am often in the St. John Airport in New Brunswick, since I live just outside St. John. And they have not fixed the water bottle refill station for about 6 months. I know, it's awful. So I'm sitting by the vending machine, and this little boy says to his mother, "Mom, I'm really thirsty. I would like something to drink." And she notices that the water fountain doesn't work. And you can't bring filled bottles in with you because airport security. And she says, "Well, sweetie, I don't have any coins for the machine. I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait till we get on the plane." And then they start the beverage service, which, as you know, with Air Canada, you don't know when that's going to happen. Well, I have some coins in my pocket, and so I say to her, "Oh, I have some money for you if you'd like to buy your child some water." And she was very flustered, but eventually she said, "Okay," and we bought the bottle of water. He took it, he sat down, and you could tell she was kind of uncomfortable. She kept apologizing. She offered to buy me a sandwich on the plane, and I was like, "Look, the price between a bottle of water and a sandwich on the airplane, that is not an equal trade. It's okay, don't worry about it." But she kept insisting, and I could tell she was more and more uncomfortable, and so I said to her, "Jesus said that we should give thirsty people something to drink. It's okay, don't worry about it." And she sat down across from me, and we had a 30-minute conversation about how she worked at the Catholic School Board in Calgary. And it was just one of those conversations that you only ever have in an airport waiting for an airplane. And I've never seen her since. But it was a moment, a small, simple moment where I could share a little bit about why I live the way that I live. And I was being a little funny, but I was also being a little bold. And it can be that simple. Evangelism can be those small, ordinary moments where you share a little taste of what transformation looks like in your life. So I'm not going to get you all to report back at the next meeting about how many people you've evangelized to. Don't worry. But if you want to talk further about what evangelism could look like in your community of faith, or resources that we have as a national church to develop the discipleship of your congregation, please get in touch with me. I'd love to continue talking a bit about what that could look like.